Hello, my lovelies. Well, how time flies. It's coming up to a year in December since my first Golden Bone video, and what a ride it's been. I once again cannot overexpress my, frankly, unending gratitude and appreciation for your support of the channel. Also, thank you for your patience as I've collated the massive amount of really interesting questions that I've received on YouTube, Discord, and even Twitter. Some of these are quite specific, whereas others are to answer general lines of questioning that I've received over time. What I've tried to do is split them into general topic sections for your viewing convenience. In addition, we will have the outcome for the Gold and Bone art event at the end, with one person's submission becoming canon, so stay tuned. I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, let's get into the 50k Q&A. Do you have any book recommendations? I wanted to start with a fun one, alright? I used to read a lot as a kid, and I'm definitely trying to get back into it. I always love it when I do, I've just been so busy I've not found enough time. A few that come to mind that I'd highly recommend include Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, The Mortal Engines Quartet by Philip Reeve, Godkiller and Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner, and The Edge Chronicles by Paul Stewart. I just find those ones really fun. How about webcomic recommendations? Let's get straight to it because there's so many amazing ones out there. Fair Meadow by KP. This is about Goma, an Orcish soldier who, traumatized by war, finds herself in a pacifist commune in the Cascadian wilderness. Tiger Tiger by Petra Nordland. The tale of a young noblewoman obsessed with sea sponges who assumes her twin brother's identity in order to go on a grand sea voyage of love, adventure, magic, and scientific inquiry. Vainglorious by Kelly. The tale of a dragon named Ray who is exiled and cursed into a human form by challenging his queen for the throne, and is now embarking on a grand adventure to find a cure. Daughter of the Lilies by Meg Siveru, which asks the question, what happens when a man who kills monsters for a living falls in love with a girl who's convinced she is one? And a quick round of honourable mentions include Lies Within by Lacey, Countdown to Countdown by Zhao Tong Valinxi Kong, 10 Earth-Shattering Blows by Tommaso DeVito Francesco, Bicycle Boy by Jacares, The Witch Door by Annie Kay, and All Known Alternatives by Karolina Jankovic. I do apologise if I got any of those names wrong. What's the story behind your avatar, the chubby little guy with a cup of tea? Coffee, maybe? That's me, or a fun, stylized representation of me. I am in fact a chubby short gal with a shaved head and a love of hot drinks. I've always drawn myself similarly, though there's been some natural evolution over time. As for the mug, well, I'm always having a little sip on a hot beverage. What's your favourite flavour of mochi? Ooh, either a nice cocoa chocolate or fresh fruity flavours like mango. Milk first? Or cereal? Cereal first, then milk. I'm also a weird heathen who barely puts any milk in and slowly adds more over time, because I'm a slow eater and I don't like soggy cereal. Relating to Chiron, do you think there'll be more short-form content, or do you think this will be a one-off? As I mentioned briefly in the description of that video and on the Patreon, this is just a fun, extra mini project. Sometimes if I have art or writer's block, working on something else actually kind of helps shake things loose in my brain. Chiron is a chance for me to work in a different genre, or place ideas that work better in sci-fi setting somewhere else. I didn't want to do any short-form content unless I had a decent idea I felt worked best in that format. For me, horror is as much about what you don't see as what you do see, so Chiron was really a perfect fit. Do you have any more tabletop RPG content in the works? Great question. People have asked about the TTRPG I teased a while back, as well as the D&D boss I designed with the Fantasy Forge. And obviously questions about if Golden Bone will perhaps get a RPG release in the future. In general, yes, I will hopefully be making more TTRPG content in the future. Like with the Parlour Maiden, I'd like to maybe have a few more videos involving making stats for creatures or races and publishing them for free. Thinking of, if you haven't already, go grab yourself the Parlour Maiden alpha stats so you can test them out and talk to your players. As for the current project in the works, that is a smaller scale RPG project I've been kind of ideating for a while, with the hopes of maybe doing a small Kickstarter run in the future. I have frankly so many project ideas, as do a lot of us. I don't want to get too ambitious on my first outing. Something like Golden Bone, for example, will likely need a small team working on it, or at least a bit more experience under my own belt first. It's dense, an incomplete world that isn't fully fleshed out yet, and I work on all of my content part-time on top of my full-time job. That's why I want to do a smaller project first, so I can learn about the process and practice with something a little lower stakes and smaller scale. If all goes well, that'll give me great ammunition to get additional help for something big, like Golden Bone. Are you an educated or professional writer, or a hobbyist one? I have a BA in Games Art and Design, as well as a Level 3 teaching qualification and a 120-hour TEFL qualification. In addition, I've written part-time for a number of tabletop RPGs, including several of Cubicle 7's Doctor Who RPG books and their 5th edition supplement, A Life Well Lived. Despite all of that, I would still somewhat consider myself a hobbyist, which is less false modesty and more perhaps a sign that we're always growing and dealing with crippling imposter syndrome. How long have you done art and writing / world building? Like a lot of nerdy artist types, I've been making characters and art since I was a little kid. Be it making fan comics and illustrated stories with friends, to the dawn of being able to post things on sites like DeviantArt, it's been a creative outlet for me most of my life. Who are your favourite artists and illustrators? A lot of the artists from the webcomics I listed previously, for sure. In addition, I've idolised Chris Riddell and Tony DeSilizzi from a young age, and even I can really see a lot of their influences in my work, especially in how I draw humans sometimes. As for more traditional artists, those include John Bauer, Van Gogh, and Andrew Wyeth. I need to know, have you played Elden Ring? And if not, what do we need to do to get you to play? I haven't played Elden Ring, but I desperately want to. I've been considering maybe doing a bit of gaming here and there, just to kind of have a laugh with everyone, maybe when I'm a bit too burnt out to draw. I've recently been into stuff like Witchfire, which could be quite fun. If watching me be an incredibly mid-gamer is something you lovely folks are interested in, then I'd love to hear it. What art program do you use for your videos? I typically use Adobe Photoshop. In the past though, I've made use of everything from GIMP to Krita to Paint. Do you use a custom brush for your art? What brushes do you use? I honestly tend to get overwhelmed if I use too many brushes and tend to have a favourite of the month, if you know what I mean. The scratchier line art I've done in some of the past Golden Bone videos is the default Kyle's Real Oil brush on a separate layer. I also have a customised palette style pressure sensitive round brush I use for most of my other work, especially if I want subtle colour variations. Do you edit your own videos? What program do you use and how did you learn? I do edit my own videos using DaVinci Resolve. It's a really great piece of free software that I definitely recommend. I'm entirely self-taught as well. Once upon a time, I played around in Windows Movie Maker, making AMV fan videos for films I liked, and it just kind of sort of evolved from there. With hindsight, a lot of my current skills evolved from me being a fun, nerdy, cringy teenager, so take that to heart. What is your approach to world building, and what is your approach to research? Obviously, this topic is super broad, and a lot more goes into it than I could probably fit into just this Q&A. That being said, a few key rules I've always set for myself are: 1. Make things I love and enjoy instead of what I think others will like. If you make something you love, others will love it too. 2. Somewhat related, except you won't please everyone. With, for example, Golden Bone, my focus and interest is exploring cultural, social, and philosophical ideas. Others have kind of pushed me to give them more in-depth details on how, specific mechanical objects would work, or to add things to the magic system which I'd rather not. And I've just kind of had to politely decline or explain I don't have the answers they want. It's, okay to stick with what you love. 3. Be kind, considerate, and thorough in your research, especially when drawing inspiration from other cultures. Always be receptive, respectful, and humble with feedback from others, especially those of a culture you may be drawing influence from. There's nothing worse than someone who does a 5-minute Google and claims to, be the expert on something. 4. Diversity and experimentation is the spice of life. Force yourself out of comfort zones and into the weird and strange. The benefit of fantasy worlds and fiction is that it isn't beholden to our own world's rules and regulations. So have fun with it and explore something new. Have you tried to dissect the original Golden Bone video, specifically to try and understand what made it go viral? In short, no, not at all really, only because there isn't really a one-stop guaranteed solution to a successful video. The algorithm is, and always has been, a really odd and cruel mistress. Trying to chase that success would only make me go mad, and be a one-way ticket to really just being unhappy. Anyone who claims they've cracked it's only suggestions. There's no hard and fast rule that's going to guarantee success. Better to be happy and content with the success you find, and trust you've found your audience. Is this my first time creating a magic system? Not really if you count all the stories I wrote as a child, or the game design I've done in recent years. I think people tend to put the idea of a magic system on an odd pedestal, this idea it always has to be a big, finalised project. While Golden Bone is my first time committing to an in-depth, long-term project of this scale, anytime you or I write or tell a story with magic in it, you are, in some way, developing a magic system. Would you consider making a comic series on the gay ironmongers? Sadly no, one due to my total lack of time, but two because I am by no means a comic artist. As any comic artist will tell you, from layout to lettering, it is a skill set in and of itself, and one I haven't ever really developed. How much of the Gold and Bone world was created before you made the first video? Just the magic system? No, I had lots of ideas before then, though lots of them weren't fully fleshed out yet, so yes and no, I suppose. I honestly tend to find I finalise pinning down details as I'm making the art, videos, or lore scripts for them. It's always a very iterative process for me, and even then I sometimes go back and tweak things. That being said, I had some ideas for various cultures in place already, and a few ideas and concepts I wanted to explore already nailed down. Do you have a time period you pull from for your world's lore and character design? Great question. A lot of the world of Golden Bone is what I would call anachronistic. I love taking advantage of the fantasy settings that I can pull from incredibly different times and cultures throughout history. That being said, the general themes are that of the Age of Exploration, and so that's a time period I draw from quite a bit aesthetically. How did you come up with the concept for Golden Bone? I like to start a lot of my drawing and writing with a single premise and kind of expand outwards from there. My initial core idea was gold is the only material that can store and release magic. My next logical step was that then, if there was a sorcerer equivalent, they would need to be imbued with gold in some way. And it just kind of snowballed from there. The rest, as they say, is history. Do you plan on making Golden Bone into any form of media? Video game, book, webcomic, animated series, etc.? As I touched on previously, I would love to if I have the time. While I would never say no to a video game or animated series deal, like most people, I think that goes for most artists like myself when I say it probably won't happen. A more realistic goal I have in mind is to eventually produce a book, ideally either a short novel, a tabletop RPG, or maybe both. I've always had a love for writing, and it would be fun to get something collated down the road, once more of the world is fleshed out. Are animal ornata a thing in your world, or is the phenomenon exclusive to humans? Generally speaking, no. That is to say, it's not a phenomenon currently widely known or recorded by scientists of wider notoriety. That being said, many cultures are exploring distant horizons for the very first time, so who knows what they might discover? Are Anivas the bad guys? Yeah, very much so, in the way any colonialist or expansionist superpower tend to be. It doesn't mean all they do is evil or that those that live there, such as the members of the Ordo Electi, are inherently bad people, but the world is a nuanced place. Most folks are just trying to get by, and most folks are convinced that what they're doing is the right thing or for the right reasons. That being said, expecting a single citizen to take down their entire corrupt monarchy or government isn't super feasible, sad to say. Is it rune work or willpower that gives gold abilities? Couldn't an alchemist enchant a tool to do it for them? There was a little bit of confusion here, yeah. Inscribing isn't necessarily what gives enchantments function, it's will or willpower. It's just that for the average human, the most consistent method is slow, meditative rune work, because you're thinking really hard about the thing while you're doing it. Runework also has the added benefit of telling others what the function of the object is at a glance and how best to repair it. Ornata do not need this runework as they've already been seemingly touched by some great and willful superpower, or being or entity. They're ready to go and just need to be awakened. Can someone turn themselves into an Ornata? This is something I go into a bit more detail on in both my first Q&A and my Ornata video, but the short answer is no, it's just not viable for a number of magical and medical reasons. Probably hasn't stopped some folks from trying though. Is there some form of collective, organising alchemists and sharing knowledge across the lands, or do they for the most part function independently or with their community? There are collectives here and there, but they're more like traditional houses of knowledge or studios. Think Da Vinci's workshop, that sort of thing. Rune engraving is as much an art as a science, so every master has their own valid and functional method that are very different from one another. You don't really need as much of a centralised resource for rune work, but also each master is very secretive and protective of their craft and certain techniques. It's very, very elitist. How does society develop around gold mines? Mines are simply more coveted, since gold is. For many, especially alchemists, while gold is wondrous, it is not an object of worship. For those like the Paragons that do view gold as a function of religion, it's less about the mines and more about gold when it's taken out of the ground and put into refined forms, such as jewellery. Is the map fairly well defined, or are there areas of the world that need to be explored and cartographed? Great question. In Universe, a decent chunk has been mapped, though much like in our own world, a lot of it is not always super accurate. But there is still very much more to be explored. As for me, the person making said universe, it's still in the rough drafts stages. I think developing more cultures will kind of give me some more jigsaw pieces to work with and start to piece the place together. That being said, I do have several countries and cultures planned, so there are a few more jigsaw pieces to come. Has anyone ever tried to make gold golems, and is such a thing possible at all? I don't doubt there are equivalents of this, suits of armours or machines enchanted in a dozen different ways. These sorts of things, however, would if anything be in the experimental stages. You probably wouldn't see an army of them. As for anything approaching sentience, that's not super likely at the minute, but weird things have happened. Do Ornata ever become alchemists in order to enchant themselves? Is that a feasible option for them? Enchanting oneself is ill-advised, as it usually requires intense medical supervision, and becoming an alchemist is often an incredibly expensive undertaking. I definitely wouldn't rule out an incident or two of this happening, but it's probably not common. Are there any cryptids in Golden Bone? Ooh. In a manner of speaking, yes, there's definitely folklore for sure, and very real, sometimes very large, unusual creatures I can't wait to draw in some future videos. Magic's ongoing presence has encouraged a certain level of esoteric evolution among humans, flora, and fauna alike. And finally, for those who missed it, we had an art event a little while back to design a member of the Ordo Electi. The key aim was to get people creating and having fun. The number of people who tried giving drawing, traditional or digital, a go, sometimes for the very first time, was honestly a delight. I really loved seeing it. If you're curious about the full briefing as well as the Enovasian style guides, don't be afraid to pop over to the Discord and have a look at the PDFs, as well as the fabulous contributions. There was also a live stream where I went through every single entry live if you're really curious. As part of the event, I was going to select a favourite to be made canon, so without further ado, let me start with some honourable mentions. The first is Anya by V and the Flowers. I really loved the creative placement of her native gold because it's the bones of the inner ear, which is just such a great idea. I just thought that was so creative. Her ability had an interesting, specific, and unique concept with a really grounded and realistic implementation. The same goes for her character design. I can really tell that V and the Flowers drew from the style guides and kind of made it their own. And it was done in a beautiful traditional medium, pencil by the looks of things, and then scanned, which is awesome. There's a lot of fun details about her powers, such as the tinnitus she experiences, and overall it was just a great job. Well done. The next is Gabriel, aka Rhythm by It's Wednesday. I thought Rhythm had such a creative power concept, which was to sense an Ornata and their ability. To not make it too overpowered, there was a lot of clever and flavourful limitations such as distance, and the fun idea of the ability manifesting as a vibrating hum in his chest. They also provided a really excellent cross-section illustration of his native gold and mark, and it had some really beautiful attention to detail. He felt really alive to me. Another honourable mention is Airlease by Letters. It was really great to see an older woman represented among the ranks of the experienced Ordo Electi, an inquisitor and someone trusted with overseeing Ornata who are best suited to spying, espionage and the like. She's a really great example of how sometimes the best leaders are someone who knows how to utilise the strengths of others, though we shouldn't underestimate her, clearly, if her really striking outfit and that hidden dagger I've spotted are anything to go by. Next is Fram by Zershigan. A gorgeous, gorgeous design that feels incredibly at home within the world of Golden Bone, with a really excellent and nuanced backstory reflecting the hardships of the world she exists in. I really enjoyed her other alternative outfits at the bottom, and this really intricate equipment section that was provided. She had very very defined motivations for joining the Ordo Electi, a fun healing power, and some really fun little quirks like a big sister complex. What a fab design! Next is Nathaniel, aka Spark, by Frog. Seriously, this is just such a great character. Frog ran with a scrapped concept I never really got around to implementing. Nathaniel is an excellent example of how a small niche ability can be utilised effectively and with deadly results. With his ability allowing him to puncture holes or lighting gunpowder from a distance, sometimes all it takes is a single spark or puncture to turn the tide of battle. He's also tied super well into the lore of the setting, referencing the Dionian sects before I'd even fully finished them. Frog got all of that info from streams, and they have a really clear understanding of their place within it. And last of the honourable mentions is Iron Hand by Valibor. As is typical of their art, it's incredibly gritty, characterful and intricate. Look at that. It's great to see an example of the Ordo Electi's old guard in action, so to speak. Iron Hand exhibits a lot of different stylistic influences, but they're all tied up within a more Enovasian style. He seems really well travelled, and with a clear niche of hunting down rogue Ornata. This design also shows a solid understanding of the setting. In order for the Ordo Electi to invest in expensive custom prosthetics, he would need to be an invaluable asset with a lot of service under his belt, which Albus here clearly exudes with, every pore of his skin. And on to our final pick, and the character being made canon. Allow me to introduce you to Megisa Osentuyi by Erotio, or Eroshio, you must tell me how best to say your username. They were inspired by the head Ornata representative and overseer within the Ordo Electi, Kasembo Aloe, who has appeared previously in one of my streams while I was working on her. And they said they intended for Megisa to be from the same country, one I will get to in a future video. Megisa has a very fun and unusual ability, and a unique way of utilising it. In short, he can create smells, producing scents he has smelled before by making a circle with his fingers and thumb and blowing into it, which is a really fun visual for me. This can be utilised in so many clever ways, from creating noxious gases to clear buildings or stun enemies. It can also be used to cover suspicious odours, lure creatures, or even cover tracks and stop troops from detecting things via scent. There's also some really interesting limitations, such as him requiring to regularly resample scents to keep them fresh in his mind, and the limit to how much he can produce. Overall, he struck me as such a fun, interesting, and really grounded addition to the Ordo Electi. Also, massive props to the artist, because from what they've told myself and the others in the Discord, this was one of their, I believe, first attempts at this kind of character design, and you can tell that they really went all out. So well done again. Welcome to the world of Golden Bone, Megisa. It is a distinct honour to have you here. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who took part in that or came along to the stream and just encouraged everyone. It was such a positive atmosphere, and it was just so great to see everyone create something. Oh, I love it. And with that, we are done. What a time we have together, eh? Here's to many more fun creative adventures to come, and I promise to keep squeezing projects and art in wherever life allows. The names you see on screen are my Patreon supporters, and I don't really have any clever quips about them this time. They're just amazing. If anything, this feels like the time for some sappy, honest truths. Being a creator online or offline is hard. Single video success does not a career make, and a YouTuber can go mad chasing that elusive algorithm. But instead of finding myself alone after the algorithm turned its evil gaze away, what I found is a small, kind community of creatives who just wanted to make fun things with me, or to read my silly little projects and support me in making my silly little things. To hear I've inspired anyone to create or to try something new, or have simply brought you some comfort by watching something I've made, really does mean a great deal to me. As someone who regularly finds the same kind of solace and comfort in other artists' work, it profoundly moves me, if I'm being honest. For me, this is what the internet's all about, right? I would never lie and say it wouldn't be the dream to make this my full-time job, or to have a silver play button hanging up on my wall. But to say I even have an audience full of thoughtful, creative people, is more than I probably could have ever dreamed of. So thank you so much, no matter how much you've been able to support the channel. Even if you can't afford to tip me a little via Patreon, just your comments or likes have helped me so much. So swing by the Discord and hang out with us if you have the time. And speaking of time, my lovelies, I will hopefully see all of you next time.